Jay's okay.
We're all set. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our district level pivot plan update presentation this evening. This evening, what we'll be doing is answering questions regarding our plan to pivot. We got many of them that are already submitted, but we will also be taking live questions tonight as well. The format tonight is we had people pre-submit questions, but first, we're going to provide a brief presentation that answers many of the questions that were submitted. There were a lot of questions that had the same characteristics and really were related to each other. So to eliminate redundancies, we put together a presentation at first that we feel answered a lot of those questions. And then second, we also started an FAQ document with the questions submitted tonight. And we will review the answers to those questions this evening, and any other questions that we get this evening, we will add those to the document. And also tonight, you can submit new questions and we will answer them live, and we will include them in our FAQ document. And if we don't have an answer to any question that you have tonight, we'll find that answer for you, and we'll make sure that we include it in our FAQ document as well. We'll be updating our FAQ document daily, and it'll be on our website. So please make sure that you watch that every day, because each day we are getting new questions, not only here at the district, but at the building level. And we've been in cooperation and coordination with our building level administrators, and we've been answering questions together. And we encourage you to attend the elementary presentations tomorrow evening and the middle school, high school presentations on Wednesday. They'll be answering a lot of specific building level questions, and we feel it'll be very informative for everybody to tune into those presentations tomorrow for the elementary, Wednesday for the middle school, high school. Please make time for those. And now we'll begin our presentation. So welcome to our pivot plan update presentation. Will be presented by myself, but I also have help today from assistant superintendents and some other district staff as well. My clicker is not working, Mr. Filipowski. There we go. Thank you so much. At first, what we'd like to do is review the summary of the key elements for the plan to pivot. These are the steps that we've already gone over. Steps 1 through 5, we've basically already completed. And if you remember, just last week, we sent out the instructional survey to families. We're now at step 6. We're reconfiguring classrooms as we speak and other areas within the school to meet the updated guidance. And we're at step 7, sharing the instructional survey results and next steps with our staff and families. We'll be doing that tonight with you at this presentation. And after we get through step 6 and 7, we'll be ready to begin step 8, which is implementation. And that will be next week for elementary school. The plan to pivot and New York State guidance. In accordance with the updated guidance, the district has shared the plan to pivot with our families, our staff, and the Erie County Department of Health. We're also currently working through the New York State Education Department in their reopening plan process, following all procedures and protocols. Here's the plan to pivot in the New York State guidance that is located on our website. And again, I want to refer you to please see our website and this information. We update it every day. We keep everything current. And if you really want the most updated guidance and everything about our plan, it's on our website. Please make sure you see that. And as I said, watch it daily for the FAQ as we update this each day. The plan to pivot summary. Here's some of the key elements. Elementary school presentations are tomorrow. Tomorrow, April 20th, we encourage everybody to, with elementary students, please make sure that you see those presentations. Middle school and high school presentations will take place on Wednesday, April 21st. Middle schools at 6, high schools beginning at 7. Now here's our instructional model survey results. This is the actual question that was on the survey. We made it quite simple and right to the point. With a change in state guidance allowing for increased capacity for full-time in-person instruction, which instructional model do you choose? Full-time in-person instruction or fully remote instruction? Here's the results. Total response, 9,548. Full-time in-person instruction is 7,336. Fully remote instruction, 2,212. So that's down slightly from the beginning of the year. And we'll go over that in just a minute as well. Here's some of the change at the elementary level. The remote in-person at the elementary level has gone up 260 from people going remote to in-person. From in-person to remote, it's gone up 11. So the net district change at the elementary level is 249 for people who are going to from remote to in-person instruction. And that's spread out between all 6 buildings. At the middle level, those making the transition from remote to in-person is 173 students. In-person to remote transition is 43. That's a net change of 130 that will be returning to the building. At the high school level, remote to in-person is 282 that'll be returning to our building. In-person to remote is 78. And the net district change is plus 204 students will be returning to the building. So with that change, we know that we have adequate space in our buildings to handle that change. We actually thought there would be a little bit more, but this is fine. So it makes it so that the change that we make this transition will be very, very doable from our standards. And we've been making those changes right now in our buildings, and the classrooms are being prepared as we speak. Now, there's also, we're making transportation changes as well. And to help us with transportation change information, I'm going to introduce Mr. Matursky, who's going to bring us up to speed on transportation information and our child nutrition information. Mr. Matursky?
Thank you, Dr. McKenna. We'd like to thank our parents also for participating in that survey, just as you did, because that information has been very valuable to us as we are moving forward with reviewing exactly how many seats we have on a bus. As you can see, and as you may have heard or read in our website, in our reopening plan, there still is 1 person per seat unless you are siblings. And at that point, you siblings may sit together. So what we will be doing in the coming weeks is just reviewing our routes, and we hope that we're going to have buses that will be on the normal routes, but in the end, there could be some issues where we're going to have to reroute some buses, and on some occasions that may result in a late bus. If that were to happen, one thing I do want to mention here is that the MyStop app, which is very valuable to our parents and our students, may or may not be working if you have a rerouted bus. So we just want to make that, that point here so that you're not too concerned if you don't see that and the bus does show up. It's because a bus has been rerouted to pick up your child. But generally speaking, that app will work as it has in the past. In regard to child nutrition, I know that we had sent out some information saying that we were going to adjust the process and go to a order form for the meals. In reviewing that with the State Education Department last week, we did receive approval from them on that. However, they've modified that approval as of today. So we're going to just stay with the current program where children can eat their breakfasts in their buildings. And we are going to make sure that that is available to any student who wishes to have a breakfast. So it's basically the same as it has been. No changes will occur there. Additionally, any special meal plans, as always, please contact your school building's cafeteria manager. They will share information and will work things out for you. That's really the main thing that we want to share with child nutrition, is that we know that there will be still 6 feet of social distancing in that situation for all eating of food. And the buildings are working with our child nutrition department to make sure that everything is done according to the required guidance.
Thank you, Mr. Matursky. Now we're just going to make a quick technical adjustment at this moment. Are we all good? Let's see, where are we right now? The next is the implementation timeline for the plan to pivot. So I'm not sure that's the right screen there. Mr. Filipowski, I think we're at the implementation timeline for the plan to pivot. There we are. We're having some technical difficulties, so I'm not sure myself and Mr. Filipowski are just going to have to coordinate here from across the room, but I think we can do this, Mr. Filipowski. Implementation timeline for the plan to pivot. The plan to pivot guidance, that's our next slide. I'll let you change that, Mr. Filipowski. According to the updated New York State guidance, to ensure equity in education, responsible parties should prioritize efforts to return all students to in-person instruction. And that comes right from the guidance. The district is addressing New York State guidance with a phased-in approach, beginning with the elementary schools on April 26th. This is also in alignment with our district values and beliefs to return students to in-person instruction. Now, the next slide. This is the plan to pivot implementation timeline. We're still on that. This is based on current data and information from the Erie County Department of Health. The district is in an area of high risk transmission. Now, this goes back from last week. Tomorrow, they'll be giving new data again, because every Tuesday they release their data. Now, last week, you could see that there was 370.6 new cases per 100,000. That means that we are in an area of high risk transmission. In other words, we cannot bring back our middle school and high school students during this level of transmission, but we can safely bring back our elementary students according to the guidance. And that's why we're moving forward with the phased-in approach and bringing in our elementary students next week on Monday. Next slide, Mr. Filipowski. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Balin, who will be giving us a summary of the change.
Thank you, Dr. McKenna. As Dr. McKenna stated, next Monday, April 26th, we will be implementing our changes to meet the updated guidance at our elementary schools. Our elementary students at our 6 elementary schools will return to 5 days of in-person instruction. As our community and our parents are aware, also available on the instructional survey was our remote option, as this was also made available to students for this school year to remain in a model that is 100% remote. At the middle school and high school levels, our high flex model will continue at this time. As Dr. McKenna mentioned, when the conditions allow, we will also plan on bringing back our middle and high school students, and students would return for 4 days of in-person instruction. Much planning has gone on at the district and certainly at the building levels. And thank you again to all of our staff at our middle and high schools. We are ready to implement our return as soon as our region achieves the benchmarks that have been set by the New York State Department of Health in the updated guidance. As was made available to families in the elementary schools, the remote option was also made available to students at the middle and high school level for the remainder of this school year as well. Pending no other relevant changes to guidance, please recall that the model selected for a child for this year in our most recent parent survey is the model that will be in place for the children for the remainder of this school year. If I could have the next slide, please. We also just wanted to highlight at our middle school and high school, our model in its entirety provides for 5 days of instruction. 4 days are comprised of our in-person learning, which is our high flex model. And as all of you are aware, this is 4 days of concurrent synchronous instruction for students. We did also want to include, and this was shared at our March 9th Board of Education meeting, a numerous amount of opportunities, learning, and other supports are available on Wednesdays for our students. Several are here on this screen. So in addition to independent assignments, tasks, and research, students may be working with teachers or other adults. This could be remotely or in person. There's quite a bit of intervention and instruction happening, again, both remotely and in person. Support may be available in math and reading, depending on the need of the child. Home visits are conducted. Materials are dropped off and picked up. SEL or social emotional supports are plentiful, as are mental health supports. Office hours and team building opportunities are also made available to a number of our students. Technology supports, working with teaching assistants, and certainly other groups, whether it be small groups, whole groups, or even in many cases, individual supports are available. In addition to all of those supports for students, our teachers are involved in data analysis, responsiveness, collaboration, and action planning, all intending to meet the needs of students on an individual as well as a class level.
Thank you very much, Dr. Balin. Next slide, please, Nick. Social emotional learning. We have been putting in many supports to support our students, our families, and our staff for social emotional learning. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Scanzuzzo, who himself and his department have been working very hard at providing social emotional supports across our district. So Mr. Scanzuzzo, I'll have you review our social emotional learning and supports.
Good evening and welcome to everybody. I'm happy to talk to you about our social emotional learning initiatives that have taken place throughout the course of the year. It's been a very challenging year, but happy to say that we have many protocols in place to support not only our staff but our students as well. Here's an overview of our current social emotional learning staff supports that include mental health supports. We have 14 school psychologists, 15 social workers across the district, 14 counselors in our middle school level, 15.5 school counselors at the high school level. We have 20 assistant principals as part of our administrative team, and we have 3 school resource officers who are also hired to support our buildings based on the feeder pattern that they support and serve from elementary, middle, and high school. We talk about social emotional structures, and our current strategies are really, we kind of embrace a toolbox approach. And what we have listed here, these are areas that focus on prevention and intervention through stress management and wellness, check-ins, teaching social emotional learning competencies, community circles, and substance abuse education. We also are involved in family engagement, referral services, consultation with administration and teachers on students experiencing anxiety, trauma, or individual crisis. So our setup exists in every single building across the district, and they've been very busy to support and accommodate our school community. Some of the key components and resources that exist, as you can see, the first bullet point there, and we talk about the CASTLE learning and the 5 competencies, which include self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, responsible decision-making, and relationship building, are really keystones and hallmarks that take place in our middle schools and high schools, as well as implementation at our elementary buildings. We have the Institute of Trauma and Trauma-Informed Care. We're proud to establish our relationship with the University of Buffalo. They're offering professional development 2 times a month at 2.5 hours per session. And what they're providing for us are strategies and supports for all of our teachers and support staff, which includes our aides, monitors, food service people, custodial staff, and all the like that would like to learn more about it. In addition, we've also partnered with the Alberti Center of Bullying and Abuse Prevention at the University of Buffalo, and in particular, Amanda Nickerson, who's currently working on a program, on a grant called NABIT, which really helps establish bullying protocol in schools and empowers students. The study is currently taking place at East High School, and will expand into South and North High School this year It's a 3-year program, and we're happy to be a part of it and part of their research. In addition to the restorative practices, this is something that's really gained some steam in our district and in our buildings. We talk about community building, community circles, and the focus really is with peer-to-peer opportunities that exist within our buildings. For example, in our link crew, our web clubs at our middle schools, Challenge to Change, and Sources of Strength are just a few examples of some of the restorative practices that take place within our buildings. From a social emotional learning standpoint, these structures that you see here posted on this page help support the mental health, behavioral, and academic supports for kids, and they're embedded in our social emotional programs. So when we talk about child study teams, RTI, academic intervention services, shared decision making, all of our wellness initiatives, and the professional development opportunities that we provide our staff, just really just kind of show the emphasis that we've put on social emotional learning and the impact that it's had on student prevention and providing them the supports and they need, not only for the students, but for their families as well. And as a reminder, if you have any questions, please contact your building principals.
Thank you very much, Thank you very much, Mr. Scanzuzo. And that's very important advice to reach out to the buildings, because at the buildings with the building principals, our counselors, our social workers, our teachers, they're the first line to reach out to. And we do have many supports in our buildings, as you can see. So please reach out. And why we spent time tonight on the social emotional learning and the social emotional services that we're providing is many of the questions that we received were related to programs and practices that we have with social emotional learning, and how are we reaching out to help and support our students. As you can see, we have an awful lot of programs that are happening and many resources in our schools. So please make sure that you reach out to the schools if in any way, shape, or form you need any support. We have a lot of resources and staff available, so don't hesitate. Please reach out. And now we're going to first, in just a few minutes, we're going to read through the questions that we received. That's one of the things that we're going to do in just a second. As we begin to answer the questions tonight, we wanted to let you know that we've consolidated a lot of the questions that were submitted for redundancy. A lot of them were the same types of questions. Many of them were related to social emotional learning, so we felt that that was good. Oh, could you put that back up again, Mr. Filipowski, that last slide? I'm going to get to that in just a second. But what we wanted to do was make sure that we consolidated them so there wasn't just redundancy. So we hope that the social emotional learning presentation that we just did answers a lot of those. And there was a lot of logistical questions too, just about, middle school, high school, and why they're starting, later, and hopefully that you could see that that was based on the guidance. So we wanted to make sure that you had information regarding all of that information that you submitted. And now what we want to do is we're going to go through these questions, and then after that, we're going to give people a chance to submit questions live. And that's why I was hoping you could put that back up again. So we're going to take district-related questions. Building-based questions have been shared with principals, and they will address these questions in their forums. I want to bring that up too, that many of you had shared questions, but they were building-based questions and really classroom-specific questions, a lot of them. We have forwarded those questions to the principals, and they are going to be addressing those in their forums over the next couple of nights. And we asked them to reach out individually as well to the people who asked those questions. So I just want to let you know, if perhaps your question, hasn't been answered here tonight, if it was building based and sometimes classroom specific questions, we have forwarded those to the building principals, and they will be, so please attend those forums tomorrow, and they will be reaching out to you. And if you have questions tonight that you'd like to ask to us live, please make sure you do so by emailing your questions to unifiedsolution@williamsvillek12.org, and we will answer them live later on in this program this evening. And every question that gets submitted, we are putting that into an FAQ. So all the questions that we've received so far, we've put into an FAQ. All the questions that we get tonight, we'll put in an FAQ. It will be available on our website. So as I said before, please make sure that you are watching that every day for updated information. And now what we're going to do is we're going to review some of the questions that were already submitted to us. And I will begin by answering some of these questions, and then some of the other assistant superintendents and some of our staff will answer depending on their areas of expertise. So the first question that I'm going to answer is wearing a mask optional? And there's a real quick answer to that. No, wearing a mask is required at all times when on school grounds, except when consuming a meal. Mask breaks will be limited. Please contact your classroom teacher or building principal for specific information regarding mask breaks. We met with the principals about them, and as long as they're done with specific criteria, they can be done, and in certain areas. And there will not be mask breaks in the classrooms, but outdoors and in certain areas throughout the buildings, they will be having them. So for specific details regarding the building that your child is in, please reach out to your building principal or teacher for specific information. The next question that came to my way was, why are we changing the model when COVID-19 cases are on the rise in our area? The updated guidance allows for an increased capacity for in-person learning. Due to evidence that transmission risk ranges by age of the student, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, recommends that physical distancing requirements differ by grade level and community transmission risk. The updated guidance from the CDC and the New York State Department of Health emphasizes districts should prioritize efforts to return all students to in-person instruction. According to the New York State Department of Health guidance document, school districts in our area can return elementary students at this time, but based on the transmission rates, which we showed earlier in the presentation, it is too high to bring back middle school and high school at this time. So based on the guidance, we can bring back our elementary school students, which we are doing on April 26th. And when the guidance changes, if and when the guidance changes, we will bring back our middle school and high school students. And that's one of the reasons too why we've been preparing our buildings even now for all students to return in anticipation of any guidance changes that can happen in the future. Our next question is about plexiglass dividers, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Matursky to answer that question.
Thank you, Dr. McKenna. Yes, we received a question about whether plexiglass dividers will be used between desks or on desks, either or, because of desks becoming closer together. And the answer to that is no. The plexiglass barriers are not required by the New York State Department of Health in their latest guidance document. They also stated that these barriers are no longer considered as a viable mitigating strategy. I'm going on to the next question also that's dealing with cleaning. How will classrooms and schools be sanitized with more students attending class? And in this situation, the district is following the original CDC guidance from the beginning of the school year, and will follow that guidance for the remainder of this school year. That includes cleaning and disinfecting classrooms, as well as breakfast and lunch eating areas after each use. So again, each classroom will be cleaned and disinfected every night, every school night.
Thank you, Mr. Matursky. Our next question, I'm going to have Christine Harding, who's our nurse practitioner, answer this because it's a little more technical and she has technical knowledge in these areas. So Mrs. Harding, if you would answer the next question.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. McKenna. Good evening, everyone. The next question is, do you know if elementary education will shift modalities once again if transmission rates reach a certain number in the county? More specifically, did New York State, the county, or the district set a % of positive cases metric for when to reduce capacity in school at all grade levels? So it's important for everyone to note that as a school district, we really look to follow, any guidance set forth by New York State Department of Health, Erie County Department of Health, and the CDC. So according to the updated guidance from New York State Department of Health, Whether in an area of low, moderate, substantial, or high rate of transmissions, elementary schools can reduce social distancing from 6 feet to the 3 feet to allow for the return of full-time in-person instruction. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, provided the metric for the rates of transmission in their updated guidance in February, which the New York State Department of Health has subsequently adopted. Please see our district website for additional information. And as we progress with answering questions, we will also give you more information as to the metrics that are followed.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hardy. And now the next two questions deal with our instructional program. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Balin to answer those.
So the next two questions, as Dr. McKenna stated, are instructional in nature. One question asks about why only 4 days and not the full 5 days for middle and high schools. And we hope that the slide that we included in the presentation helps in part to answer the question. We did want to share that when the transmission rates allow, middle and high school students will receive 4 days of in-person instruction through the high flex model and 1 day of synchronous and asynchronous learning. I want to make sure that it is clear that in the guidance, there are actually some examples, and these are not all inclusive, and we also included examples in our presentation, that instructional experiences are not defined solely by a student's time spent in front of a teacher or in front of a screen, but the time spent in standards-based learning. And this is all coming from the guidance. This happens under the guidance and direction of the teacher. A variety of experiences actually could include things such as, but are not limited to, completing online modules or tasks, viewing instructional videos, responding to posts. In some cases, these come from the instructor, or students may be engaging with other class participants online or in a phone discussion, conducting research, doing projects, or meeting with instructors or adults, as we mentioned several examples earlier. And this could be remotely, in an online platform, or in person in some cases, or even by phone. The one thing to keep in mind is that we should always have communication between the home and the school. So if there are questions or students need support or access to any particular supports, that they please contact their teacher or the building, because certainly there is a great deal of assistance or support available from the teacher or a trusted adult or colleague. Our next question was about the hybrid model. And the question states, how come my child can't remain in the same learning model she is in, which is hybrid? And as we have heard, of course, in the updated guidance from the CDC in New York State Department of Health, the emphasis is on prioritizing efforts to return students to in-person instruction. Our plan to pivot includes an increase of in-person instruction. As we have stated at the elementary schools, the present hybrid model that was offered included 2 days of in-person learning, and with the new guidance, this will increase to 5 days of in-person learning for our students in grades K through 4. And in accordance with the guidance, we also recognize for this year, families would prefer in some cases for their children to access 100% of their learning from home, and therefore the remote option has also been included and available for the duration of this school year.
Thank you very much, Dr. Balin. And our next question deals with our lunchroom and circulation, and I'll turn that back over to Mr. Matursky.
Thanks again, Dr. McKenna. This question was asked on whether or not windows and doors would be open for better air circulation during lunch. And that's the first part of the question. And the answer to that is, yeah, we will continue to do that. That is in the guidance, and we are opening windows and doors as much as possible to improve the airflow. An additional part of that question was asking about the usage of air purifiers. And for regular ventilation systems, which we have, those are not necessary in the spaces that we are ventilating, and therefore there won't be any additional in classrooms or that, because of our ventilation systems are all meeting the recommended guidance that we have. We will continue, though, to do everything we can to improve the air circulation in the rooms as we have from the very beginning of the school year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matursky. Our next two questions will be answered by Christine Hardy. They deal with quarantining. And Christine, if you would please take the next two questions.
Yes, thanks, Dr. McKenna. The next question is, if a child has COVID-19, are all of the children that were near that child in the classroom or lunch expected to quarantine for 10 days? So with the changes in social distancing guidance down to a reduction to 3 feet, in the event of a positive COVID-19 case, contact tracing could result in the quarantine of an entire classroom. The Erie County Department of Health will establish, as they've always done, the contact tracing, quarantine, and isolation protocols that the district is required to follow. And like we have done the entire school year, we will continue to work with the Erie County Department of Health regarding quarantine and contact tracing within our classrooms. And it's just important to note that we haven't, nor has any district gone to that 3-foot model for that reduction in social distancing. So Erie County is really going to always err on the side of health and safety, and we will follow their guidance with regard to that quarantine protocol. The next question is, how many cases of COVID-19 and exposure inside the building warrants going back to hybrid? Again, the New York State Department of Health adopted the CDC guidance regarding the rates of transmission, which our district is following. The updated guidance from the CDC and the New York State Department of Health emphasized districts should prioritize efforts to return all students to in-person instruction. Unless this guidance changes, the district is not planning to returning to the hybrid model.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Harding. Our next question deals with the UPK program, and Mr. Scanzuzzo, you are the overall coordinator for this program, so I'll have you answer the UPK question.
Thanks, Dr. McKenna. The question states, what is the status of the UPK program with reopening? And if you read the New York State Department of Health guidance, announced new COVID-19 guidance for schools, allowing for increased capacity for in-person instruction by reducing social distancing under certain conditions set forth in the interim guidance for in-person instruction at the pre-K level through grades 12. So what's currently happening at our UPK sites that are servicing our district kids, that they are individually working on communications right now to share with families regarding any updates to the new guidance and how it affects the capacity of their programming and allowing for more students to attend in-person instruction. Some of them are regulated by licensure, which prevents them from expanding their current levels. And others are currently allowing all students to be in since the beginning of the school year. So it's really dependent upon the individual program that children are attending, and they'll be receiving guidance and surveys, just like we sent out to our families to get a barometer of who's looking to come back and in person to determine whether or not they could be fully accommodated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scanzuzzo. The next question deals with before and after school programs. And I know, Mr. Matursky, you coordinate those for our district, so I'll turn that question over to you.
Thank you again, Dr. McKenna. So this question asks the following: are there going to be any before school programs for our children whose parents are working full-time away from the home? And the programs that are offered in district are offered by the Just for Kids program. They utilize some of our district schools. These questions really should be directed to them. And a phone number that you may use to do that is 716-639-8500. And they also can be reached by emailing the program director, whose name is Christine Capozzi. And she's the director of school-aged programs. Or you may have a contact that you already are aware of at a building where that program is being held, and certainly reach out to them.
Thank you, Mr. Matursky. I have the next question, and I know we've addressed some of this already, but this is a good question that should be reviewed. What is the turnaround time for middle and high schoolers to return to school 5 days like elementary once the rates go down to allow? Middle schools and high schools are ensuring their buildings are prepared and ready for students to return as soon as the rate of transmission decreases. When the transmission rates allow, middle and high school students will receive 4 days of in-person instruction through the high flex model and 1 day of asynchronous learning on Wednesdays. For specific information regarding your child's schedule, please contact your building principal. So really it comes down to, as soon as the guidance allows for us to do this, we are ready to make the change. We've been preparing, our middle schools and our high schools have been actively preparing, just like our elementary schools have. So as soon as the guidance changes, we'll be able to pivot as soon as we possibly can. So that's why we've been preparing all models in preparation for guidance to change, which we hope changes sometime in the not too distant future. I also have the next question. If there's 6 feet between high school students, if 6 feet between high school students can still be maintained among the classes that they attend, could fully COVID-19 vaccinated students be allowed into school in person 4 days a week? At this time, according to the current guidance, vaccinations are not a determining factor in allowing for an increase in capacity. The rate of transmission impacts whether middle and high school students can return. So the vaccinations at this time are not a factor. We'll see if that changes, if any guidance changes in the future, but right now it is not a factor. And the next question, again, is a technical question that I'll turn over to Christine Harding regarding the guidance.
Thank you again. The next question is, what threshold does the community transmission rate need to reach for middle and high schools to return with 3-foot distancing rule? So according to the updated guidance for middle and high school students to move to 3 feet of distancing, both metrics set forth by CDC and the New York State Department of Health must be met. The first indicator is looking at the total number of new cases per 100,000 persons within the preceding 7 days. So the low criteria is 0 to 9 cases, moderate is 10 to 49, substantial is 50 to 99, and high is 100 plus cases. To make this relevant to Erie County, as of yesterday, 4/18, we had 355 cases per 100,000 persons over the last 7 days. So that puts us in that high category. The second indicator that we have to consider and look at is the percentage of positive tests in the preceding 7 days, or the 7-day positivity rate. So the low is less than 5%, moderate is 5% to 7.9%, substantial is 8 to 9.9%, and high is 10% or greater. So again, to make this relevant to Erie County, as of yesterday, 4/18, we were at a 5.3% positivity rate over the preceding 7 days. So you might say, well, we're moderate for the second indicator, we're high for the first indicator. So what does that mean? What that means is if you are high for one indicator, you sort of fail that metric and you have to do that 6 foot of distancing for the middle and high school. You have to be able to prove that you are in the county under that high indicator for both of those metrics to be able to do the 3 feet of distancing. So if one indicator is okay and the other indicator is not, unfortunately, you have to remain at that 6 feet for the middle and high school level.
Thank you for that clarification, Mrs. Harding. I have the next question, and the question is, will my elementary school child have a teacher change? And the answer, depending on the results from the instructional model survey, a change in teacher could occur at the elementary school level. Now, you should have already received information if you're going to have any teacher change at this time, because The principals have had the survey results, and I know that they've been making additions to their classrooms. But if you have not received any information at this time and you're curious about if your child is going to be receiving a change, please contact your building principal for specific information or any questions you may have regarding their classroom or any change in teacher that you'd like information about regarding your child and your building. Dr. Balin, the next question is for you.
Thank you, Dr. McKenna. The next question asks, what is the maximum class size for remote and in-person learning? We wanted to share that the district is currently and has been utilizing the established class size guidelines and protocols. Should a class size exceed the class size guidelines, in-building supports will be provided. And these are numerous. There is quite a bit of support available at the building level. Again, our principals are always looking at this very closely and monitoring the number of students in any particular grouping or class. So they are absolutely keeping an eye on this at all times. And certainly if there are any exceptional circumstances where the class size guidelines necessitate that in-building supports are necessary, that certainly will be provided at the building level.
Thank you very much, Dr. Balin. And the last question is really, it's a consolidation of many questions that I'll answer. The district has received several questions regarding the 2021-2022 academic school year and the beginning of that school year for next year. This forum tonight is focused on the plan to pivot right now. At this time, the guidance for the 2021-2022 school year has not been received. However, the district is preparing for multiple scenarios in the fall. So although we are not ready to make any public announcements at this moment in time regarding next fall, we are working diligently behind the scenes for plan A's and B's and C's, but it really depends on the guidance that's going to come out. As you can see, the plan to pivot, we had to wait to do this plan until we got guidance. The same thing really is determining in the fall. We are planning behind the scenes to make sure that we have things prepared. However, we're going to be waiting for the guidance and see what is required of us in the fall. So that's where we are with that question. And we will be coming out as just like we did with our plan to pivot. When the guidance gets released, we'll come out with full plans, clear steps in our plan, and very clear action plan steps for all of our buildings for what they need to do to prepare. And now I see Mr. Filipowski. He is, oh, sorry about that. He just got back in with questions that people have been submitting for this evening. And he's doing a great job, I can tell you. We've had many technical difficulties this evening that you probably don't know out there, but he's doing a lot of things behind the scenes, making things very smooth. So, Mr. Filipowski, I know you've been gathering these questions for us that have been coming in live tonight. And if you would give them to us, we'll be happy to, myself and the team, to answer the questions that you received this evening.
Thank you, Dr. McKenna. The first question, Ms. Harding, I believe you'll be able to answer, and it is, will students that have been fully vaccinated need to quarantine if a classmate is found to be COVID-19 positive?
So the answer to that question is for any vaccinated person, as long as 2 weeks has elapsed from their second dose of vaccination, if it was a 2-dose series, would be exempt from a quarantine. Also, anybody who has had a COVID infection within the last 90 days is also exempt from any mandatory quarantine by Erie County Department of Health.
Thank you, Ms. Harding. The next question, which we answered a few minutes ago, Ms. Harding did, what are the benchmarks that must be met in order for middle and high schools to reopen? Specifically, what are the numbers required? Ms. Harding, I know this is a question that continues to come up, but if you could just reiterate to the folks at home who are watching either on Zoom or on YouTube, the two metrics that have to be met in order for the middle and high school students to be able to return.
So again, the two metrics, you're looking at the total number of new cases per 100,000 persons within the preceding 7 days. And you are looking at the percent of positive tests in the preceding 7 days. So for middle and high school to go to 3 feet, you must be in the low, moderate, or substantial level for both metrics. Currently, we are in the high for the total number of new cases per 100,000 persons within the preceding 7 days. And I gave the latest stat from Erie County as of yesterday, 4/18. We were at 355 per 100,000 persons over the last 7 days. And that's really the metric that is not allowing for middle and high school to be able to reduce the distancing down to 3 feet. The percent positive over the last 7 days was at 5.3% yesterday, and that puts us in the moderate, but that is climbing. I do want to point that out, that has gone up. So those are the two metrics that are looked at to determine that community transmission rate and the ability to reduce distancing from that 6 feet to 3 feet for middle and high school. And part of the reason for that is cohorting is difficult to do, if not impossible to do at the middle and high school level. So those are the metrics. And even if you break it down by zip code within Erie County, there is not a single zip code that meets the metric of being under 100 cases per 100,000 persons over the last 7 days.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hart. I'd just like to ask a question here too. I know myself and Dr. Balin, we had received some questions today that probably were not part of this, but they're very important, and I think we should discuss them tonight. And that's the social distancing requirements for music and physical education. We've had many inquiries, I know from your office, Dr. Balin, about those and how they're going to be impacted and implemented. So I'd like you to maybe bring us up to speed on those, because I know there's a lot of folks out there that are very interested in this.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. McKenna. So in the guidance, what you'll note, in addition to all of the other guidance that speaks to minimum distances, there are exceptions where 6 feet of distance must be maintained. And in some of these areas, in music in particular, where the voice is being projected or a wind instrument is being played, or in a case like physical education, where the aerobic activity results in some heavy breathing due to the activity. Previously, these were at 12 feet of distance. So effective as part of our plan, and this is at all levels of instruction, elementary, middle, and high school, our plan on April 26th does include 6 feet of distance in these instructional areas. So we wanted to make sure that that was highlighted as part of our plan, because it's a very important piece of our educational experience and our involvement of students in these very, very critical and important programs.
And starting next week, I know in the middle school and high school, those social distancing requirements will be implemented in the middle school, high school next week.
That's correct. Elementary, middle, and high school.
Yep. All three. Yep. Thank you. Next question, Mr. Filipowski.
Yeah, another question that has come in, Dr. McKenna, and we've discussed at length here tonight and in all our presentations that our middle and high school buildings are preparing so that if the rate of transmission falls, to welcome middle school and high school students back as quickly and as swiftly as possible. This question that's posed asks, is there a cutoff date after which the district will not return middle and high school students to 4 days of in-person learning this year?
We do not have any definitive cutoff date for that. We're just going to have to see when this guidance changes, how late we are in the year. I know my perspective is if we can get kids back in, let's get them back in. I think that there's a lot of reasons to get them in, even if it's a short period of time. But again, I think what we need to do is we need to determine that when the guidance comes out and what time of the year this guidance does change. I know from our philosophical discussions and what we believe in as a district is we want our kids back in. So we'll do everything we can to do that. But right now, we do not have a definitive date.
There's a question about seniors and activities for seniors. We have talked about social emotional learning. The question is, what is the district doing for seniors? And I know Dr. Balin and Dr. McKenna, you've all met with the high school principals. They are currently working to plan events for seniors. If you want to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll start and then you can take over a little bit. I know we have been meeting with our high school principals regarding activities, and I know that they've been hard at work. They've been working with their parent groups and with their student groups. So I know that they have many activities that they are planning at various types of venues and all based on the guidance as well. I would say this is why it's really important to go to the presentations in the next couple of days at the middle school and high schools, but also to reach out to your principals specifically about some of these particular activities, because that's probably the best place to get specific information about those activities at each individual school at this time. Dr. Balin?
Yeah, I was also going to reiterate, please contact your building principals if there are specific questions about student activities. The forums really focus primarily on our reopening. There was separate guidance, as was mentioned just a few moments ago, on large gatherings and functions, and that is critical in the planning. Even before the guidance, as Dr. McKenna stated, there's been a great deal of discussion, not just at the building level, but with parents and community members, and really looking at this very closely. So please, we encourage you to reach out to your building principal to continue those discussions so that some wonderful things can happen for our students this year. Thank you.
One of the final questions we have tonight, Dr. McKenna, again, looking into the future, I know you addressed this briefly at the end of our presentation tonight regarding the 2021-2022 school year, but families are also inquiring about not only next school year, but also the summer. If you or Dr. Balin want to touch on that.
Well, we are planning to have summer school this summer, and we've been working with our principals on course offerings, and we are working on those as we speak. So we are planning on having summer school this summer. And Dr. Bailey, do you want to talk a little bit about the summer school? I know you've been preparing with the principals to get that launched.
Thank you, Dr. McKenna. In fact, much planning has occurred. Actually, our planning for summer school begins in January and even earlier than that at times. Certainly for this year, one of the items we are still awaiting is the New York State Department of Education produces a summer school handbook for administrators. It actually is due to come out in mid-April, which is right about now. So that will be critical in continuing our planning process. But we have in fact brought on, as we have done in years past, administrators for summer school at the elementary, middle school level, and also high school level. Again, as Dr. McKenna mentioned, we are looking at our programming. Any social distancing guidelines that are in effect for the regular school year will need to be maintained in summer school. So we are looking at sites, we are looking at programs, we're looking at student needs, and buildings are monitoring, even at this point early on. We are going to be poised and ready to implement a summer program, details of which will be provided in the upcoming weeks. But we wanted to let our community know that we are moving forward with our summer program. Thank you.
And as far as next school year, again, we have been planning, we have been having discussions, and again, we're going to wait until guidance comes out before we announce any plans regarding programming for next fall. But rest assured, we are planning, we are preparing, and we will be prepared. Is that it? So according to Mr. Filipowski, that is all of the questions, and I want to thank all of you for tuning in tonight. We'll take all of these questions. We will turn them into our FAQ document that will be available on our website. And again, please look at our website every day for updates. And I want to also encourage you again to tomorrow night, if you have an elementary student, please make sure you go to the elementary meetings tomorrow night. And if you have a middle school, high school student, please make sure on Wednesday that you go to those meetings as well. Keep in contact with your building principals and teachers. That's where a lot of the questions can be answered at the building based. And if you feel that there's any district level questions, you can feel free to email them to us and reach out to us. But we encourage you first to make sure that you check with your building principal, check with your teachers. And we wish everyone the very best in our plan to pivot. We're excited about getting our students back next week, and we look forward to guidance, hopefully being updated where we can get our middle school and high school students in, hopefully in the not too distant future. And thank you again for tuning in.